When I married Daniel, I understood that his family would always play a big role in our lives. He had grown up in a household where traditions were everything. Sunday dinners were treated like sacred rituals, and birthdays often turned into week-long festivities. Among his family, his younger brother Ethan stood out. He was 3 years younger than Daniel, carrying the same familiar smile but with a softer, more youthful charm. I liked Ethan well enough. He was kind, easygoing, and pleasant to be around. What I didn't realize at the time was just how much of my life he would eventually become part of. Looking back, I can see now how unprepared I was for what that summer had in store. It all began on a gloomy, rain-soaked afternoon when Ethan phoned Daniel, asking for a favor. He had just gone through a difficult breakup. His lease had ended, and he needed somewhere to stay until he figured things out. Daniel, always the protective older brother, didn't hesitate. "Of course, come stay with us," he said without a second thought. Later that evening, he mentioned it to me casually, as if inviting a friend over for dinner rather than offering his brother a place to live. "It'll just be until he gets settled again," Daniel reassured me, flashing the smile he always used when he wanted me to go along with something. I agreed easily. Family was important after all. Still, a small part of me couldn't help but wonder how long temporary might actually last. 2 days later, Ethan showed up at our door with a pair of suitcases and a guitar slung over his shoulder. He looked tired, worn out from heartbreak and constant moving, but he still managed a warm smile. "Thanks for letting me crash here," he said sincerely as I helped him put his belongings in the guest room. "I promise I won't be in the way." First, things were simple. Ethan kept mostly to himself, sleeping late in the mornings, spending afternoons strumming his guitar or scrolling through job postings on his laptop. Daniel's long hours at the firm meant that, more often than not, it was just Ethan and me at home. We would pass each other in the kitchen, exchange a few polite words about the weather or dinner plans, and then retreat to our separate corners of the house. Felt easy enough. He was just family. But as the weeks stretched on, Ethan still hadn't moved out. Each time I thought he might be getting ready to leave, he'd say something like, "I'm waiting to hear back from a couple of places," or, "I just need to save a little more before I can get my own place." Daniel, ever patient, never pushed him. Meanwhile, I found myself torn between wanting to support Ethan and secretly wishing for the quiet rhythm of our household to return. Having another adult in the home changed the atmosphere in small but noticeable ways. Even simple things like making breakfast in my pajamas or singing in the shower felt less private with him there. One Saturday morning, Daniel left early for a business trip that would keep him away for several days. He kissed me goodbye at the door, suitcase in hand, and said with a smile, "Take care of Ethan for me, all right?" I laughed, though a part of me wished I didn't have to. I expected the days ahead to feel awkward without Daniel there, but to my surprise, Ethan and I quickly settled into a comfortable routine. That first night, Ethan helped me prepare dinner. He chopped vegetables clumsily while telling light-hearted stories from his college days, making me laugh more than I expected. We ate outside on the porch, the summer air thick with the hum of crickets, and for the first time I realized I was actually enjoying his company. The following days carried a similar rhythm. We shared the responsibility of cooking, sometimes stayed up late watching movies, and other times simply sat quietly in the living room with our own thoughts. Ethan had an ease about him. He filled the space without crowding it. One evening, as he played his guitar softly, I closed my eyes and let the melody drift through the house. When he stopped, he looked at me and said gently, "You seem like you haven't had a chance to relax in a while." I laughed it off, but inside I knew he was right. Between work, household responsibilities, and daily routines, I had forgotten what it felt like to simply be still. As the days went by, I started noticing little gestures. Ethan always offered to bring in the groceries, made sure the coffee pot was full before I woke up, and listened attentively when we talked. He didn't just nod absently. He remembered details, asked thoughtful questions, and seemed genuinely present. It was a quiet contrast to Daniel, who loved me but often became consumed by work. I didn't resent my husband for it, but the difference was hard to ignore. Even so, I reminded myself repeatedly. Ethan was family, Daniel's brother. I clung to that truth whenever my thoughts drifted toward places I didn't want them to go. Yet, late at night, when I heard him moving quietly through the kitchen, pouring a glass of water, I would find myself wide awake, strangely aware of his presence in the house. It wasn't attraction exactly, but it was something that left me restless. When Daniel finally returned from his trip, I felt relief. Not only because I had missed him, but because the balance of the house shifted back to where it was supposed to be. Still, those quiet evenings with Ethan lingered in my memory. But Ethan didn't leave. He stayed on, promising again that it was only until he secured his next job. Weeks slowly turned into months. I tried to stay patient, but I began to wonder just how long he planned to remain. One evening I brought it up gently with Daniel. "Do you think Ethan might be staying longer than he should?" Yes. Daniel frowned thoughtfully before shrugging. "He's my brother. He's had a rough time. I don't want to push him." I understood his loyalty, but part of me longed for the simple intimacy of just the two of us again. The turning point came one quiet Sunday afternoon. By then, Ethan had found part-time work at a music store and was finally saving for his own place. We sat on the porch, sipping iced tea, when he turned to me and said softly, "I know I've been here longer than I planned. I really appreciate everything you've done." His expression was earnest, his voice humble. In that moment, I realized I wasn't upset with him. If anything, I cared for him more than I expected to. Not in a way that threatened my marriage, but in a way that made me see him as more than just Daniel's brother. He had become part of my daily rhythm, part of the background of my life. When Ethan eventually moved out, the house felt startlingly quiet. Daniel and I had our privacy back, but I sometimes caught myself missing the sound of the guitar in the evenings, or the simple companionship Ethan had unknowingly provided. It was a strange mix of relief and nostalgia, like closing a chapter you hadn't realized was shaping you all along. Daniel never knew the complexity of my feelings during those months, and perhaps he never needed to. What mattered was that our home was ours again, and Ethan had found his footing at last. Looking back now, I see that season as a kind of test, not of fidelity, but of patience, boundaries, and the delicate ties of family. I hadn't expected Daniel's brother to stay so long, and I certainly hadn't expected to learn so much about myself in the process. Life has a way of surprising you, often in the quietest ways, like the sound of footsteps in your hallway or the gentle strum of a guitar drifting from the next room.